Prayer realization is the high point of attainment. With concentrated spiritual attention, I guess I better do that. Humankind can affirm in faith that God's Spirit is present and that we, humankind, are one with the God's presence. So what does all this mean? What does this truth mean to each of us? Today we're going to look at that and we're going to explore that as we travel on our spiritual journey to take the insight of what is realization in mind. But let's begin with our statements of truth, shall we? I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now. So what is this idea or this concept of realization in mind? If you notice, I had mind capitalized, so that gives you a hint that we're talking about God mind. When we capitalize mind, that's what it means. But let's look at the definition of realization from Fillmore in the Revealing Word. Realization, the deep inner conviction and assurance of the fulfillment of an ideal. Reverend Warren was talking about this while he was talking about our answered prayer. It means at-one-ment, completion, perfection, wholeness, repose, and resting in God. I like that. Resting in God. It is the dawning of truth in the consciousness. When realization takes place, one abides in the light of God mind. It is the inner conviction that prayer has been answered, although there is as yet no outer manifestation. Exactly what Warren was talking about in his prayer time. And this whole definition is just loaded with the insights. So let's begin from the bottom and work our way up this definition and kind of dissect it a little bit and see what else we can pull out of this. You see, in unity, we pray knowing that our prayer is answered. Didn't Reverend Warren say that? But how many of us get frustrated when we don't see immediate results? Yeah. And how many of us, the minute we speak that prayer, begin negating what we're praying for? You know, will you pray for me for health? Although my hip is hurting and my neck is crooked and I'm just not doing so good. Immediately you go to that place of negating that truth that you're holding for yourself when you ask for prayer. And have we ever just totally doubted the minute we speak our prayer? You know, we say, I'd like prayer for something. Maybe it's prosperity, maybe it's for that perfect job, and yet when we speak it, we're not even sure that we really believe that it can happen for us. We immediately have that thought in our mind that is thinking less than the truth or less than the good that we know is there for us, and we can't really speak that request with conviction. I think we fall into that trap. And that's not the inner conviction that they're talking about here. That is not the inner conviction that we call realization when we come from that place. The definition goes on to say, one abides in the light of God mind. Can you claim that for yourself? Do you abide in the light of God mind all the time? Yes, no, maybe? Yes. Yesterday? 3 weeks ago? Yeah. It's a tough question to answer, and I understand that because what does it really mean to abide in God mind? What does that, and how is that understanding for us in our lives? Well, I can tell you one thing. It's not in doubting your prayers, and it's not from living from the negative side of life, and it's not in selfishness, nor hatred, nor disappointment, or anything less than our good. That is not living in or abiding in the light of God mind. In the prayer for protection, we begin with the light of God surrounds us, or surrounds me. But that kind of puts God out here, doesn't it? And when we do that, when we put God out here, because we do this with our prayers sometimes too, we think that God that's out there, that's sitting on that big throne, is going to wave the wand over us and all the magic's going to happen. And it's easy to picture that God that's surrounding us, that's not in us, because what happens when that happens? when we think that in our mind, we don't have to take responsibility, do we? We can put it out there. It's not our fault. It's everything else that's happening. Oh, God's not on my side today. How many people even think that in their mind? I mean, we do it. People have done it for years. And God exists right here, right inside of us. So how can we say that it's out there, even though it is everywhere? And some of you might even feel like maybe you never even really truly experienced God within you. You know, maybe you don't feel that enduring presence of God within you, which is perfect and whole and complete. But you know what? We can do just as Jesus Christ did, can't we? Yes, we can. And when we think about that, that's the idea of having that presence of God within us. That one that abides in the light of God mind. Because what happens at that point is it's the dawning of the truth of consciousness. When we believe that we can live as Jesus Christ did, you know, expressing that Christ within, expressing that in essence of God within us out into the world, then that's what we are doing. We're dawning the truth in our consciousness. It's like aha, okay? And you see, the capital M mind is God, and it's that direct flow of ideas that come from the source, from the fountainhead, from all that there is. And that place is a point of power within us. It is that point of power that wants to come out and explode. It's that longing in our soul that just wants to express. And it's the same in each and every one of us as it has been from the beginning. There's no unchanging aspects of God. God is changeless. Now, our ideas and our mind and everything changes constantly, don't we? This morning you might have got up thinking you wanted to have some cereal for breakfast and you ended up having toast. Or you waited till you came here and had the buffet out there on the table. Whatever it is, our mind changes like this, depending on what we're doing. God's mind never changes. Truth is always here. And that is our source for all that there is in the universe. And that's when we turn on that dawning of the truth and consciousness and we know that, that's when we get to that place of at-one-ment, completion, perfection, wholeness, repose, and resting in God. Because the minute we turn on that truth, that capital T truth, what happens is we know that everything that is in our lives is going to be good because God is good. And we can say amen to that. Amen. Yeah. But we have to understand it at the level of what this first line says. The deep inner conviction and assurance of the fulfillment of an ideal. The assurance of perfection. The assurance of resting in God. The assurance of at-one-ment. The assurance of completion. However you want to say it. That deep inner conviction and assurance. Can we say that we have that? All the time? No, we don't. Whoops, I don't want to go there yet. Sorry. This takes us back to the idea of the answered prayer and what Reverend Moore was talking about in the prayer time. And, you know, he didn't read my message or know what I was going to be talking about to the depth that he brought this all up, even though it all ties in. But that answered prayer, when we know that our prayer is answered, that's that point of power that I was talking about before, that we know is that direct connection with God. And when we get to that place, you know, then we have that conviction and that assurance. Now, the thing is, a lot of people will say, you know, I don't know if I've ever felt at one with God. And, you know, and that's okay. Just say that. Anybody ever feel that way? I mean, you don't have to raise your hand, but I know that I have felt that way before, that I wasn't sure if I was at one with God. There was a time in my life where I knew that there was a higher power, but could I say that I had had an experience with that higher power? No, I couldn't. I mean, and that's the thing, but I think that when we say that, it's because we don't know how to define the experience. See, we all could have had oneness with God and not know what it looks like or what to call it or what it is. And if we don't know what to call it or what it really looks like or how to define it, then what happens? We can't say we've had it, can we? Yeah, and we probably have had the experience. And some of these experiences is our own awareness and our own idea of how this manifests and how it comes out. Now, I want to share a couple things with you, and maybe these have happened for you. Have you ever gone to prayer, and you've been in that prayer meditation, and time all of a sudden seems like, you've only been in prayer meditation for a minute or two. And when you open your eyes and you look at the clock, you can't believe it. 30 minutes has passed, or 20 minutes has passed, or whatever time has passed that you thought was only 1 or 2 minutes. See, God doesn't wear a watch. And time is expansive in God time. So we could have been in the oneness of God during that prayer meditation and not even know it. That could have been our God experience, our at-one-ment with God, and not even know that we had it. But that idea of time expanding in that time of prayer is probably a good sign that it could have happened. Another one is those aha moments. We've all had those aha moments when something just happens and we go, oh my God, you just know that God was in there. It's not that OMG that they put on text, but oh my God. God was right here with me. God was protecting me in this moment. God gave me the guidance. You can affirm that. You can know that. Or you see, like this morning we saw a beautiful deer run across our street right out in front of our house, and just the next house over as we were driving to church. And it was just like the deer ran into the woods and then turned around and looked, and that looking at that deer in the eyes was like an aha moment. It was that moment that God is like, oh, all is well. So those aha moments can be that at-one-ment with God. And maybe they're just there for a nanosecond. But maybe that time has expanded further than you thought, and you didn't even realize it. Because, again, you're in God time. One of my favorite things is going to the ocean and looking at that ocean. And I can sit there for hours, and everybody thinks I'm crazy. But it's like that time just, it's just beautiful. You see a sunset. And all of those are oneness times with God. All those times are that moment where we have that deep inner conviction that God is in the midst of all that we do. Another one is the birth of a baby. A lot of people have experienced the birth of a baby. I've experienced holding a baby, and just being in that aha of that. And that is at one time with God. I know that some of us have been there during that experience when a person has made their transition, when they've taken their last breath. And you thought, why me? Why was I here when that person took their last breath? And yet, during that time, it's like this energy enters the room and hovers, and you can feel it, and you just know that the peace is there for the person. And I believe that's at-one-ment with God. I believe it's a message that we were to receive that was that oneness with God. I read on Facebook last week or the week before, I think it was the week before, about Sasha and shadow. And it was a friend of mine from Unity Village. Her name's Jan Marie. And she put on there that Sasha had been hit, you can see right there, she'd been hit by a car a month or so before this picture was taken. And she was doing pretty good and everything, but she, all of a sudden she just got real weak, and she took her to the vet, and Sasha made her transition right there at the vet. And Jan Marie wrote that she went out to her car and just cried, and couldn't pull away from the vet. And she said it was just so heartbreaking, And she said all of a sudden she looked up in the rearview mirror, and she saw in the back seat Sasha. And she was like this young puppy or young dog again, vibrant and on fire and jumping around the back seat and looking out the windows. And she thought, oh, Sasha, you're here to share some time with me. And she pulled out of a vet's place, and she drove home. And all the way home, she kept seeing Sasha in the back seat, just having great fun and just being the best Sasha she could be. And she got in the driveway, and Shadow, the other dog, came running to the car. And she opened the door, and Shadow started bouncing around and playing like he was playing with Sasha. And she said she watched him. It was just like, yay, they're playing together, they're having fun. And she said then all of a sudden, Shadow let out this big old yelp with all this sorrow in his voice, and just laid down and just stopped. And she said she knew that at that point Sasha was gone. But she said, she shared this experience and said it was so beautiful to have that happen on the way home and to see Shadow experience that. And I can't help but believe that God was in that whole experience. And for her to share it on Facebook was a beautiful thing because to me, that is what it's about sharing those God moments with each other and letting us know that God was there comforting her, comforting the other dog, comforting Sasha herself while she actually went on to wherever she was supposed to be on. And she was willing to share that God moment. And that's what it's about for us, too, is to share those God moments so that we can all validate that we've had the God moment. And that's where we get to the place where we have that deep inner conviction and assurance of the fulfillment of perfection. So what about meditation? I kind of touched on that, about the idea that sometimes we don't feel that oneness with God in meditation. And I know for me, it was years before I felt at-one-ment with God. I would sit there in church week after week. I even tried going to meditation classes. Nothing was working for me. I mean, I guess I was just like this in my mind and couldn't really feel that essence of God in meditation, and I wanted it so bad. But when it did happen, I knew when it happened. And as much as I want it for everybody else, it's your own experience, and it has to be your own experience, and it will happen for you. I can't wave the magic wand and say, poof, you're going to experience God in meditation today. No, it's your experience, and you will have it happen. And when you do, please share it with someone else. Because it's a huge thing if more people feel like they can experience that. If you've experienced it, they know they can experience it. And that's what it's all about, sharing in that experience. And that's where we get to that deep inner conviction and assurance. Haven't you ever told somebody a story and they're looking at you like, yeah, that really happened, but you know it happened and you're trying to tell them that it really happened and it really was a good thing, and they're still shaking their head like, yeah, right, you're goofy, But it doesn't matter because you know it's true, right? It's the same thing when we have that experience with God. We know it's true, whatever that experience is. Whether it's when your dog is in the back seat of a car after it's made its transition, or whether it's in meditation and you have that true awakening, or whether it's in a prayer that is answered. Whatever that God moment is, it's huge, and it's what we want to do. Now, some of us still try to put that all on the outside of us, that it's up to somebody else to make it happen. Reverend Warren and I sit up here and we pray for you guys all the time and all that kind of stuff, and we all pray for each other, but it's still up to you. And see, this is where we get back to the idea of realization in mind. Because everything that happens, every single thing that happens, derives from God mind through the oneness that we experience. And Fillmore tells us this. All ideas have their origin in divine mind, but the character as unfolded by humankind depends entirely upon our acquaintance with God. You see what I'm saying? It depends on our relationship with God. So if we think we're not having a relationship with God, that we're just going through life, kicking it up, and karma's going to do it all, and whatever case, I used to say this all the time, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. And there's nothing wrong with that, and yes, there is, because if we're not doing que sera, sera, and letting go and letting God, then we're in the wrong, on the wrong train track. But when we have a relationship with God, it's more than just that acquaintance with God, isn't it? It's that idea of that inner conviction again. We go back to that. Well, Fillmore gives us a little bit more. The ideas of divine mind are whole and complete in their capacity to unfold perpetually greater and more beautiful forms according to the thinking capacity in man. Hello? Who wants that? Me. Humankind, catches mental sight of an idea in divine mind and proceeds to put it in terms comprehensible to him on his plane of consciousness. So whatever divine idea we're getting, it's wherever we're at on our spiritual journey, how it's going to manifest out there. Now, if we can stay in that divine mind, that realization of divine mind, and take that idea and manifest it into our life directly from that, without any sidebars or our own stuff get in the way, then guess what? It's going to be that greater and more beautiful form manifesting in our world. And it's not going to be just for the good of us, it's going to be for the good of all. Do you understand that? Yeah. And the reason we're talking about this is because it's just so important to understand your relationship with God. Now, I've been reading this really interesting book about consciousness. It's totally heavy, though, too. But it's called, what's that? Yeah, that's the quote. Anyway, I thought I had a slide up there with the book on it. It's called The Spiritual Doorway in Our Brain. And it's taken me, I've been reading it for quite a while now, but I finally got to some good parts. No, it's all but stuff I can use in a message, let me put it that way. Dr. Kevin Nelson wrote this book, and he did a bunch of research on out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, but the thing that is different about his book than most of them that I've read on that subject is that he is actually a neurological researcher, and he does a lot of stuff, biology on the human brain. So he's looking at more from the scientific side, not the spiritual side, although all of this led him to looking at the spirituality of consciousness, which he was trying to disprove through the whole book, which was kind of irritating for me, because, he just was like trying to prove that this couldn't be. But a couple of points that jumped out for me that I'm using in this message is, one, that he had an associate that took his research and compiled it into this idea of, he said everybody that he researched and did work on all had like a mystical or spiritual experience. And so he categorized it into four qualities, so to speak, of these experiences. And this is what he put together. The first quality was that it was somehow beyond language. Now, when you say that that's our God experience, it's somewhere beyond the words that we can speak, and even when we describe a God experience to somebody else, it's hard to come up with the words that truly give us that essence of those feelings. I mean, it's almost as if we feel it more than we can speak it, right? Just like Sasha, when I started talking about Sasha, I saw people's faces. They were feeling it more than the words that I was speaking. And that's what they, pulled out of the neurological research. The second quality was the knowledge that it imparts. When he sees all in all, then a man stands above mere understanding. And isn't that true? When we have those aha moments, we don't know how they happen. We don't know how all that essence came together, but we know that it does, and we don't even really have to understand it. And when we explain it to somebody else, if they're looking at us like we're crazy, it doesn't matter, because we have the understanding, that understanding from God within us. The third quality was its brief duration. Although the soul sees this for a certain length of time, it can no more be gazing at it all the time than it could keep gazing at the sun. So kind of like that idea of time being expansive when you have that moment with God, I mean, we can't really measure it by time. The fourth quality, there's the book. The fourth quality is passivity. Once the mystical state sets in, the person feels as if his or her will is in the complete grasp of a higher power. Amen. Don't you feel that? Yeah, you feel it, you know it, and you feel that is so. And then he said, this is also described by less traditional religious people, I would say unity people, as achieving a higher transcendent consciousness. Hello, that's what we say, isn't it? We have a higher consciousness at moments in our lives, that we are more connected. And the reason why I think all of this scientific research is important, because it's given us these ideas of these different stages of consciousness, and it validates what we know to be true. And it's kind of cool because more and more people, need that proof. They need the proof to know that something is so. And once they get the proof, then they go, oh, okay, I want to experience that now. And so really, even though we have been experiencing it here in unity forever long, we've all been in unity, some people since birth, I know that it is there. But what I think gets in the way of us is that idea of fear. The fear or hesitation that we have around some of this, around prayer, around meditation, around miracles, around can something good happen. And I know for me that I've been in meditation or a state of prayer before, and I'm sitting there in that, and I feel like I'm going deeper and deeper. And then all of a sudden I go, well, how deep am I going? Am I going to be able to come back? Am I going to be stuck in this meditation? Am I going to be in a coma and nobody's going to be able to bring me back? Anybody ever go there? Yeah, hello. I mean, you're thinking, how deep do I have to go before I really have the true awareness? Fillmore did this for 12 hours. Maybe he was in a coma. I mean, you think about these things, and you're sitting there, and what happens to me is what? I pop myself back out of meditation and prayer, don't I? And that fear was kind of like churning and kind of going, don't want to go there. And so our fear could take us to that place of being scared to have that at-one-ment time or that true essence of that experience with God. That's why God becomes an acquaintance in our lives rather than our deep friend, you know? Yeah, that would really didn't go, did it? But that's okay. And the whole experience can bring us into that idea that we can be better than what we can be. And that's another thing that we might be fearful of. Oh, if I have this experience with God, if I truly experience God, then where do I have to be when I get out of this? I can't react to my kids doing something crazy. You know, I can't get mad at somebody driving crazy. You know, I've got to come from that place of love, from that place of that God moment. And it's, you know, it's kind of a responsibility that we have to carry that with us. And sometimes we don't want to do that. But the other piece that really jumped out at me over this research is this. Brain activity never really stops in our natural lives unless we're submersed in ice water. And I don't know about you, but I'm not planning on getting submersed in ice water during prayer meditation. So in all seriousness, though, I mean, that's telling me that my brain activity is always going to be there, even in those God moments. And for me, it was kind of a freeing experience. I thought, I can really let go. And, you know, it really has been kind of wild because I really have felt like my prayer and meditation time has been deeper since I read that. And I read that, you know, probably, I don't know, a month and a half ago or something. And so it's neat to know that my brain's not going to shut off. That no matter how deep I go into meditation, my brain has still got activity going. And at any moment, I can take a breath and come back to the now moment. Right? So it kind of takes away that fear factor, you know, that idea of fear and hesitation about prayer and meditation, because it's scientifically proven. And we're human, you know, sometimes we need that science to make us feel more secure in what we're doing spiritually. But when we do that, when we really truly let go, then we know that we are in realization in mind, and it really takes that shift in our awareness to get us to that point. And you know, if we could live from that realization in mind, if we could live from that relationship with God instead of just an acquaintance of God, the world would be a whole different place. And not just for us, but for everybody, because it's that shift. So when we go to prayer and meditation, we allow that realization in mind to unfold. And here's Fillmore's words on that. The ideas of God are potential forces waiting to be set in motion through proper formative vehicles. Guess who the proper formative vehicles are? Yeah, we are. The thinking faculty in humankind is such a vehicle, and it is through this that the visible universe has its existence. So what are you wanting in your world? What is coming forth for you today, and what have you hesitated or put off that you know is your message to do because you were a little hesitant or fearful, or maybe you thought, oh, God's not really telling me to do it. He's telling somebody else to do it because God wouldn't want me to do it. You start going into doubting and negative. But when we build that relationship with God and we truly look at the idea that we are one with God all the time, it shifts everything. It shifts our thoughts, it shifts our states of consciousness, and more will be revealed to us. And this is what we want through our relationship with God. So what ideas have you had that you wanted to manifest in your life? what I suggest you do is make a list, because I'm sure it's more than one thing. And then take each thing back into prayer and meditation and see what shows up for you, because I guarantee you, if you go to that oneness with God and ask God, what is mine to do? Is this mine to do? Is this the idea that you wanted me to do? You're going to get messages. You're going to open up that pathway to that realization in mind, and you are going to receive the next thing for you to do. And all you have to do is ask for the next thing. What's the next step I'm to do to achieve this? And you can choose a new one every day. But think about this. The idea of a house as formulated by humankind varies all the way from a wigwam to the most magnificent castle, right? Our imaginations are wild. But the original idea of a house as it exists in God's mind cannot be anything less than the perfected consciousness of man, of which his body is a symbol. This is the temple not made with hands, and it is the only temple acceptable to God. So this is how it's important to think about going and listening and being silent. Listen and silence, same letters in both words. So when you go to prayer and meditation, you see, they're color-coded for you, so it's easy. The same letters are in listen, the same letters in silence. And so when we go to that place of prayer and meditation and we actually are silent and we actually listen, we will receive the messages. We will receive all the answers to all of our questions, and we will know them with that inner conviction that we are to know. You know, it's when we know that we know. And you know, why do we need to learn this at one-ment with God? Why do we need to practice this? Why do we need to go back to prayer and meditation every time we have a question? Because this is what we are to do. This is what we are to do in the world. And when we do this, we are realizing how important it is. You know, even the medical profession anymore, you know, has seen the importance of prayer in people's lives, haven't they? They welcome people to come in and pray. I know at the hospital and stuff, when we've gone to visit people, they want us, everybody stops and lets us pray with them, even if they're doing something else, because they know the importance of prayer. And if the medical field is starting to see the importance of prayer in what people are having done, you know, physical things, then we need to realize the importance of that and how much power is in that point of power of that oneness with God, and how we can shift everything in our lives by going to that place. You see, all the untruths lie in a stagnant pool. You know, it's where we have that fear, that unforgiveness, that lack, anything that we think that we're not good enough, or any of those thoughts. It's just a stagnant pool of yuck. And all the truths are that light and enlightened and beautiful experiences that are waiting for us, because that's all good. And all we have to do is step out of the muck and allow ourselves to be in that oneness with God, and we can follow Jesus Christ once again with these words. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these. So what do we desire? What are our prayers? Truly, what is your prayer for yourself? If you want financial success or failure, depends on what your attitude and what your mind and what your consciousness is saying. I choose success, don't you? If we want success, we ask for success, knowing that it is coming forth for us, knowing that it's going to be right there. And we might even receive it in the next prayer or the next moment of silence. To attain prosperity, what do? We affirm prosperity. We have the birthright that all is good in our lives, and all we have to do is accept it. Don't be fearful, because God is good. And I think we can know that we're not going to be placed in ice water anytime soon, right? And then in that, we can live on fire with the Spirit of God moving in and through us, so that we can manifest that good in our lives. Are you with me? Yes. You see, spiritual realization changes things. The realization in mind connects us to the realm of possibilities. So what are you ready to do today to bring forth all the possibilities in your life? Thank you for being here today. God bless you.